friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks Workshop. You've probably already seen the first banjo video from this customer. He sent me 2 banjos to work on. In fact, I've got his note here. I folded back his contact information, but you can see here up in the corner what it says. And if you can't read that, it says, "You put the aluminum tone ring on my Gibson Master Tone." Love it. So thought I would change the tuners on this. It looks like he says Iida. Yeah. Whoops. This is a tenor banjo, and there it is right there. It's all taken apart. He started to put tuning keys on it and apparently ran into problems. Apparently they stuck and broke out right here, and so he wants that cleaned up a little bit. I think we can clean that up some. He wants a new clear head on there versus the old head that's here. Hopefully they're the same size. They look to be, so I think we can do that without too much trouble. But, and he wants the chrome polished up. He basically just wants a full meal deal, whatever it needs. So that's what we're gonna do. Here we go. This is how the banjo came to me, all in pieces. I get to put the jigsaw puzzle back together without the picture. Although I have some general idea what the picture looks like. So we'll figure it out. There's no doubt about that. So we just got a lot of parts here to work with. I'm not sure where to start. I guess I know where I want to start now that I'm thinking about it here. By the way, he sent along these Waverly tuning keys. No, they don't give those away. At least I assume these are the Waverlys, since they're in the Waverly box. They look like nice tuning keys, so I imagine that's what they are. I know for mandolin, the Waverly tuning keys, the ones I buy, are $540 a set. So they don't give them away at all. I imagine these run a few dollars too. Okay, well, like I said, I think I know how I want to start this. And because this is the toughest issue right here, I think we're just going to start with that and clean that up and fill that in and buff it back out. Make it look like it never happened, or at least I hope we can. We're going to start by just filling this around here. For the most part, you're not going to see this anyway because of the tuning keys will cover a lot of it. There will be some you'll see. So we're going to clean this up. There's a pretty good chip right here, so I'm going to fill it completely full. Other than that, it doesn't look too bad chip-wise. There might be a chip or two up here. Just filling any low spots with this right now. And because one of those chip outs is fairly deep, it's going to take that filler a little while to dry, and I'll probably have to fill it again. So I'm just going to let that set for a while, not getting any big hurry about it. We got quite a bit of other work to do on the banjo, so I'm going to look at this area here and just start getting a feel for what it's going to take to put this back together. One of the things he wants done is everything polished up. It's far easier to polish it while it is apart like this, I know that for sure. We've got this same metal polish, the Flitz metal polish here. Seems to work real good, so that's what we're using. It seems to clean and get the gook off of there and buff it out, and it seems to have a protecting aspect also, protective coating. I like this stuff. It goes on easy, it comes off easy. Here I see a little bit of grime that's on here. I'm going to see if this will rub it off. It looks like it's going to buff it out. You can take this kind of thing to a buffing wheel, but the problem with that is that you stand the risk of buffing through your chrome if it's one of those high-speed wheels and it really buffs hard. You can buff through your chrome pretty fast and then you got an ugly spot. So I prefer to just do this kind of thing by hand. It's not that hard. It just takes a little bit longer. And in some ways it doesn't even take as long because with the wheel then the grime gets everywhere and you got to clean it out everywhere. Wow, that looks good. Boy, I mean, that really does do a nice job, I'll say that. And the bottom of this is far less critical, but I think I'll just go around it one time real fast with a light amount of polish here and just wipe it back off. More of a protecting coating than anything to keep it from tarnishing. The bottom side's not as polished and buffed anyway. It's a little bit rougher, so just a light amount of work on this will be fine. Yeah, that looks good actually. It looks really nice. Even the backside looks a lot better. Go back over the top again because I'm sure I smeared it with the other junk. Set that out of the way. I'm going to wipe down this chrome ring. I'm not sure how much work we have to do on the chrome ring. It looks pretty polished already. I hesitate putting the polish on there because it's going to get in these holes and make a mess. But it actually looks real nice. I don't see any fingerprints or smudges or anything, so it looks fine. If it ain't broke, you don't fix it. That's the way I look at it. Okay. that looks good. Now we've got a whole box of puzzle pieces here. And I literally mean a box full. There's a lot going on right here. Arm rest, tail piece, flange, are the things that go through for the bolting on a resonator, I think. Well, actually, in this case, it's probably to help hold on this. A broken bridge in there. I don't know what that's going to do for me. And then there's a new good bridge. Got a lot of parts here. He's got his key in here also, it looks like. These look like the ferrules that came out of the peg head. I only see 2 of them. That's not good. There's only 2 of them here. I don't see any more in the box. Oh well. And those are really rusted bad. I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if I'd put them back in anyway. They're really corroded. They may not fit the new Waverlys anyway, so I don't know what the deal is with that. Well, unless I'm putting that on wrong, that don't look quite... Oh, there it went. I don't know what it was caught on, but it was caught on something. Now it's going much easier. I kept thinking, why is that so tight? I have no idea what it was caught on. Oh, I bet it was sitting on that washer or something there taking up space. Don't really know, but anyway, it's loose now. That's the way it should fit. I couldn't figure out why it was so tight. Now we have a tone ring, which has got to be buffed out here. Got a little notch in it where it fits over the neck here. Well, it's supposed to anyway. Not that special. There it goes. Again, just playing hard to get along with. And then lastly, we have a ring here. I'm looking to see where the neck, there it is, there's where the neck goes. Well, it looks like it should all go together real well. First thing we'll do is we'll just hand polish out these parts. Well, I don't know when the camera turned off there or when I turned it off, but I started putting this together. I've got these 2 on either side of the neck, and I've got one back here opposite of this one because it was the first one I put on. Now I'm going to go over here and put the opposite one of this one on, and I'm only putting them on hand snug at the moment. And let me warn you before you go too far with this that you want to make sure that your neck joint and all that is centered around your neck. I've already done that off camera. I thought the camera was on, but you basically just slide everything back and forth until you get it all lined up straight and square to itself. Looks pretty good. You can adjust it after you get a little bit of tension on it, but boy, you can't. If you have very much tension, you won't do much adjust. So you pretty much want to get that figured out early on. It looks pretty good. Now I'm just going to go kind of 90-degree area to the rest of it there. That's pretty good. This ain't helping. The holes aren't lining up here. There we go. Yeah, that's better. Now the other thing, as you're putting these on, if you've never done it before, the other thing you want to do is look at the rim spacing around here and keep it even, because you can pull it down on one side or the other side, and you want to make sure it's all going down about at the same rate. And trust me, the ones you've already put on get loose in no time at all when you start putting more on. So you just got to kind of go back and revisit the ones you've already put on, and this one's loosened up a lot. So you just got to keep visiting and revisiting. It's not a one-time shot deal. Now that I've got it kind of anchored, I'm just going to try to get as many of them on here and get them started as I can. I'll bring you back when we get a little more progress. Tell you a couple more things about putting this together that you might forget or not know about if you haven't done it before. You know, you've got a ton of these little nuts here. They all go on a certain direction. Like that end is hollow. It doesn't have any threads. This end has the threads. The threaded end goes on first, like that. And then all of these are the same way. So all the threaded parts go on first, and then the hollow is back towards this side here. The other thing, since this one has a resonator, and I had forgotten it did, I noticed these other parts were laying in there. Well, that's these resonator flanges, I guess you'd call them, whatever they want to call them. And they have to go onto the 2 bolts. So they have to go underneath this outer flange. They go under it, and they get bolted on with these nuts. And then when you put your thumb screws down through those, they go into these bolts here, if that makes any sense to you. So they're just guides more or less for the thumb screw. Thumb screw tightens down to those also, so they are important. But anyway, you got to put them in the right place, otherwise they won't match up with this. So you do got to pay attention to that when you're putting it together. I did get ahead of myself there and had to take a couple of those back out, but not that big a deal. I've got it tightened up. Ordinarily, I tune 5-string banjo heads to a B note, or at least a B flat. This one, right now, I just have it up to an A. Actually, it's almost coming around to an A sharp. It's peaked up on the A right now. I don't know. I'm going to leave it there for right now. Being that it's a tenor banjo, I am not an expert on tenor banjos. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I am, because I'm not. But I'm going to leave it there about that real A, just almost A sharp spot. You know, set it up and see what that does to the top. If the top is sagging a lot, well, then we may have to tighten it up just a little bit more. But I would assume you don't want quite as much crack out of a tenor banjo as you would out of a 5-string banjo. So that's why I'm not tightening it up anymore. If I tighten it up more, the note's going to go higher, obviously. Again, because I've never seen this apart or whatever, when I'm looking in here, I've got all these extra washers available. So I'm assuming they would go underneath these nuts. I've never seen washers on those nuts before on a banjo. I never have. So I didn't even think about these washers being in here. There's the same number of washers as there are these nuts, so therefore they must go under there. And I'm going to go ahead and loosen them one at a time and put them back on there. Got all of the flange bolts are in there. The washers are on there now. Fixed all that up. Check the tension on the head. The head's a little bit tighter than it was before. As a matter of fact, I think it's up to a B flat now. As I was putting this together, I'm noticing there's a dugout spot right in here. Don't know how well that'll show up in the light. Thought maybe I could touch that up just a little bit, make it look a little bit better. What I'm saying is something's digging in there. I'm sure it's something to do with the tailpiece, but because that keeps digging that out, well, at this point you could try to fill it and, you know, darken it back up. But the problem with filling it is it's just going to knock it right back out of there, whatever the problem is. I think what I'm going to do is just take a file and make it look intentional and just smooth it out, and then color it back dark. Okay, it's nice and smooth there now. No rough, jagged edges like before. And now what I think I'll do is just darken it in. I've got a Sharpie here. Because that's a black color, I think I'm just going to darken it with the Sharpie. I think that'll work. I've got some black leather dye. If I have to go over it with that, I will. But I think the Sharpie will just be fine. That looks real good. Can't even hardly tell it now compared to the way it looked before. So now it's there and it looks like it's almost on purpose. I tried to make it even on both sides. Before we put this back together, I'm going to clean this up, buff this out. Uh-oh, I can see here, got the milky colored stuff going on. So apparently this finish has gotten very wet. It didn't dry back out real good. I've heard of taking a heat gun to that. I'll see what heat does to it, and if heat darkens that back up, we'll show you that here. I've been applying some heat off camera to it, and it's pretty hot. I don't see it changing anything whatsoever, and I don't feel comfortable going much hotter than that because it's pretty warm. That didn't work, so I'm not going to try that any further. I'll look into some other ideas. Well, it's the next day. I've buffed this out, trying to get rid of this. You can see this faded look, milky look. I think you can see it. You can definitely see it around this edge, you know, in different places. There was one little spot here in the middle that I did get to go away, at least pretty much. I used heat on it and kept rubbing it and heat on it and rubbing it and things like that. I've seen people have success on the internet with heat to get rid of this milky finish. It's not doing anything to this. In fact, I got it so hot at one point where it actually looked like it was going to bubble, so I quit and I just rubbed that bubble out and it just went right away. I got lucky there. I'm giving up on it. I can't see any way to get rid of this milky look. The customer said this was sun fading and stuff like that, but I don't think so. I'm pretty sure this is from getting wet while playing it. In other words, sweating and having this against your body. That sweat penetrates into that finish and turns it milky white. I can't see a way to get rid of that. It just doesn't look like it wants to go away. Maybe in the comments somebody will have come up with a way to get rid of that, and then in the future maybe I can do that. But for this one right now, it's not going away and I can't see any way to do it. I've tried buffing it, I've tried, you know, heating it, so that's the only things I feel safe trying. I don't want to put any solvents on it because I'm afraid something will eat up the finish. Turn my attention back to the peg head now. It's been 24 hours, so I'm going to just sand this with 600 and see if we can't get rid of some of this cracking and this look here. There's some more scratches out into this too, so I think I'm just going to go ahead and sand this whole peg head here, this 600 first, and then we'll sand it with something else like 1200 or something and see if we can buff it out. Yeah, you can't hardly even feel that now. Pretty much gone. You also go to 1200 and sand it with that. Well, that looks pretty smooth. You can still see, obviously, the problems. It's black, so I'm going to take some black leather dye and see if I can dye that to match, see what it looks like. Well, I thought I had the camera on. I did not. I sanded this with 600 first, and then I sanded it with 1200. And then I took some black leather dye, which is alcohol-based leather dye. I colored it back in to match, and it seems to match pretty close. It may not be perfect, but it's pretty close. So what I'm going to do now is spritz it with a lacquer to put a coat of lacquer over the top of it. You can see how I have it taped off here. I'm going to spritz that with some lacquer. I'll be right back. Well, if it wasn't for bad luck, just wouldn't have any. You can see here that that was pretty much an epic fail. The black didn't blend very well with surrounding black number one, but the worst part of it is that those cracks that were there just kind of like turned clear. As soon as I sprayed the lacquer on it, the black went away and those cracks turned like clear. So you can see them radiate now. It's like cracks in ice. It's just, you just never know what's going to happen till you try something. And of course, it just had to say, no way, I'm not going to allow you to fix that. I'm just going to have to let this go ahead and dry, I guess, and then I'll just sand it right back off. There's lots of holes in the peg head here, lots of little holes, and I'm going to fill all those and try to make it look pretty good for the customer before we put the new tuning pegs back in there. So I'm going to use just plain old wood filler and dye it. Be the fastest way to do it. I just take a popsicle stick that I have tapered down to a flat edge there, force it down in those holes. There's actually 2 holes per peg, and then there's a dent. And I don't know about the dent, if I'm going to fill that or not. It's a pretty big dent. Anyway, we'll do what we can. I'll see what the dent looks like filled. If I can fill the dent, then maybe put a drop of super glue over it for a finish or something. The dent doesn't want to fill because it's all finish and it just slides around. But we'll make it work one way or the other. There's a couple of extra holes here. One extra big hole here. I don't know what it's from. Pretty sure by the time we color this and put a drop of super glue back over it to finish it and then buff it out, you'll be able to tell it, but you'll have to look pretty close. Trying to force it down in that hole, the screw hole, is pretty deep so that it doesn't shrink or fall out. Trying to keep it thin also so that it'll dry quick and we can get right back to it. We'll let that set up for 20 minutes or so and let it dry. That doesn't look too bad. It always looks worse before it looks better when you do something like this. So, I mean, obviously you can see it pretty well. I've got my light brown leather dye here. With any luck, we can make it match pretty close. Yeah, that's a pretty close match. If someone calls out here, yeah, there's quite a bit of scarring from the previous tuners, so this is filling it in, making it look pretty nice compared to just leaving it like it was. The good stuff about this dye is if you go over it again, it gets a little darker, and like these spots look a little light to me, so I'm going to go back over them a little bit more here. I think that's going to be pretty good. I'm going to just lightly wipe it with the rag here just to get any excess off. And now we're going to take super glue with a toothpick and just lightly saturate those areas and try to get just a little bit of a finish over those areas so that we can kind of buff it all out and make it all look the same. Okay, we've got it all filled and doused with a little bit of super glue. Now, this super glue, it just takes too long to really dry to suit me. It would probably be 10 or 15 minutes, and I want to keep working on this, and so if I spritz it with this accelerator, it's going to turn it milky white. Now that is normally. However, if you wait about 20-30 seconds like this, and maybe even blow on it a little bit, and then spritz it with the accelerator, generally it doesn't do anything except just get hard. Now it'll probably, because I'm doing it on camera, probably show me to be a liar. But no, it looks like it worked. It looks like it got hard in place there, and you can see it getting hard as I'm watching it here, where I had it on a little thicker. And it doesn't look like it turned white. So there's a trick for you to use super glue without getting it to turn white, is to let it dry about 20 seconds or so, and then breathe on it a little bit, and then spritz it with this. I don't even think you have to blow on it, but the blow on it, the moisture in your breath also helps cure it just a teeny bit. Anyway, it seems like it worked. It all feels hard now. Yeah, it's all good and hard. Now we can move on to the next step of sanding it and buffing it out. Alright, now if I tried to go ahead and sand this super glue is actually pretty hard, and it does sand pretty good, but with this being mounded up and lumped up like it is, it just would be hard to sand it smooth. So I'm going to take this X-Acto blade with the rounded edge here and just lightly scrape the highs off of these super glues. Just very lightly scrape it to try to level it out a little bit before I sand it. You don't hardly put any pressure on it at all. It's just very lightly scraping it. And you may not have to do every one of them, but this one here was especially high. I would definitely do all the ones that you can feel that are pretty tall. I think that'll probably work. And then we can always scrape some more if this doesn't look good enough. Well, I can't think another day's gone by when you were standing by my side. Blue all over again. I'm blue for you. It's not as good as I was hoping. It's looking a little lumpy, and the color's coming off of it. I don't know, just gonna have to do a little more work, clean it up some more. I'll bring you back when I get her cleaned up. Well, I have to admit, this didn't turn out quite as nice as I was hoping. It's not bad, you don't see it too much now, but I had to do quite a bit more work. As I was sanding off the super glue, it was flaking off or whatever, it wasn't sticking, and the white was showing back through, so I had to re-dye it. And then finally I just buffed it out with semi-chrome and with the wax. And it looks pretty good. I think once you get the tuning keys on there and cover up a lot of the junk, it's going to look better. But the front of the peg head fought me all the way. It was very difficult to work with, and so was this. And it's just something to do with the finish that's there already, and maybe how it's been treated over the years. Maybe it had some kind of a weird wax or polish on it or something. I don't know. Not making any excuses, it's just that you run into that once in a while, and it's very hard to do anything with it. And this is one of those that's just really hard to do anything with it. I don't know why. But it is what it is. We're going to go on from here. We're going to put the tuning keys on there and go the rest of the way. These keys are offset a little bit. There's a bigger area here, and I'm putting that bigger area forward on this because there's a hole there that it covers on all of these keys. And so it's just getting rid of one more little mistake. I'm not sure if there's a way that those are supposed to be installed or not, but that's the way I'm doing it because it covers up more problems than the other way. Almost got them stuck in there, and now we can turn them over and put the washers and the nuts on there, which are the ferrules in this case. I had to drill all the holes out to 3/8, and they fit real snug. Okay, so we'll tighten those up with a little wrench. Well, we're just about ready to string it up. The customer supplied a bridge here. I think this might be a new bridge. It doesn't look like it's used. The strings are supplied by the customer. He's This, keep in mind, is a tenor banjo. I might point out that, you know, the neck angle looks pretty good to me compared to the top, and I think it's going to be fine. You can adjust the neck angle with these two rods that are in here. You can, you know, sometimes you're moving the rim a little bit. You're maybe pushing the rim out a little bit. Another way you can do it is you can put shims in the front of the neck right here. I would only do it if they're very thin shims. I wouldn't try to shim it out, you know, a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch. But if you were only putting a, you know, a 10,000th shim in here or something like that, I think that's perfectly acceptable also, as long as the rods are tight and all that. In other words, to cock it at a deeper angle if you need to. Or to bring it up, obviously you wouldn't want any shims there. You could possibly shim the heel. Otherwise, when you're adjusting these rods, you can make the top one shorter, the bottom one longer, and that's going to bring the neck up. Vice versa, bringing the bottom one shorter and the top one longer, that's going to push the neck down. So there's lots of ways you can adjust this. If I don't have to adjust that, the best way for me is to adjust it off of these feet, because it's very accurate. If you get it strung up and you measure at the 12th fret, and if you're high by say 10 thousandths, then you take 20 thousandths off the feet and it's going to be just right. Whereas if you're tweaking with the neck and all that, you got a lot of going back and forth and tweaking. Now I know you can be very accurate with that method, but this is a very accurate method. And in addition, in my opinion, most of the time the feet are too thick anyway, and so if you thin them down a little bit, that just gives you a little better sound going into the top. Those are my opinions, my theories. That's the way I do it. Certainly everybody has their own opinion and, you know, idea, and I'm not saying that they're wrong or anything. That's just the way I do it. Okay, so anyway, we're about ready to put the strings on it and see where we're at on the action, because I have no idea at this point. I'm not going to make you watch me string it up, so we'll bring you back here once we get the strings on it. I might point out that this is a 5-string tailpiece. It's set up for 5-string banjos, but we'll just ignore the center hole, I believe, and just use the outside 2 on this. I might also point out while I'm doing this that you can adjust the tension down on the strings here with this little adjuster here. Now I like to see this tilted down where there's a lot of pressure down on these strings. That puts more pressure on your bridge. So I like to see this adjusted pretty close to the top. I've seen them up quite a bit on other people's banjos, but I prefer to see them down. I believe you get a better crack out of your banjo, a little better tone. So here we go. Once again, as I'm tuning this banjo up, the tuning keys feel very loose, and every one of them has been very loose. So what I'm doing is I'm tightening them up to the point where I feel some resistance. As soon as I feel snug, I'm quitting, and we'll see if we need to go tighter later. I think it's just where you want to be, at least to start with. Well, here's the sad situation. The instrument's strung up, it's into pitch, and I checked the intonation. That's all good. But the action's pretty darn low. It's less than 80 thousandths at the 12th fret. I'm afraid that this new head is going to stretch and the bridge is going to keep going down and making the action even worse. Right now it actually plays fine and it doesn't buzz, and it says he likes a low action. But I think I better tighten this head up some more, otherwise this is going to sink down and the action's going to be too low. So here we go. I'm adjusting the neck a little bit. Now I do have the strings up to tension. I'm expanding the bottom, which is pushing the neck up, which is actually loosening the strings. So it's really not a problem when you're doing it this direction. If you were doing some other direction, it would be a problem. So what I'm doing first is I loosen this on the outside here, a couple of turns actually, so that it's loose. And then I tighten up this right here. Now, if it wants to spin, there's a hole here that you can put a little rod in to keep it from spinning. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and do that just for safety's sake here, but I don't think it's going to spin on me. I'm extending this, so I'm pushing that neck forward by doing this. Now we're going to check it again, because before 80 wouldn't even go under there. I've expanded it just a little bit. 80 just goes under there now. Before it lifted the string, and here it's still slightly lifting the string on here. Before it wouldn't even start under there. So it's just barely lifting the string. We're going the right direction. We just need to do it a little bit more. We got plenty of slack there. I'm just going to hold this rod to keep it from spinning, and I'm going to expand it out a little bit more. And let's test it again. Yeah, that goes under there nice and easy now. And it's still lifting the string just a little bit there, but not much. Test it again. Just barely lifting it. So I'm going to try it just a little bit more. I don't want to press my luck. I could also tighten this other bolt. Actually, that one's gotten loose. I'd have to tighten it from the outside though, and I'd have to take it completely apart to do that, so I'm not going to deal with that deal. But I do want to make sure that that's snug. I don't want it loose on me. Still got room there, so let's try tightening this just a little bit more. Maybe we'll get by with that. Now it doesn't even touch it now, it just slides right under it. It's still touching it on this side, but boy, just barely. I'm going to lift the neck a little bit as I hold down here to let it stretch a little bit. Yep, that's just it. That's all we needed right there. Yep, that did it. Well, maybe it's still touching, but just barely touching. Well, I mean, it's just right at 80 now, where before it was way below 80 there. So I think that's pretty good. I tightened up the head. The feet are still sinking in a little bit, but I've got that head pretty... I've got it cranked down pretty good. You know, I just hesitate sending it back to New York because it could drop down some, you know, over time. Before I forget, we're going to tighten up this outside bolt here again so that it stays where I've got it here. The outside bolt is just more like a keeper, like a lock. That's pretty much all it is. It locks it tight to this one. Let's double check our tuning now and see where we're at. Yeah, all the strings dropped in tension, and that's natural for what I did. I will tell you that before I tightened up all of these nuts around here, I did loosen the strings before I tightened those up, because you're pushing the head up in that case and the strings would be getting tighter and tighter. So you always want to loosen the strings before you tighten it. I think we're pretty good. I'm going to double check it again now that I brought it back up to tension. That probably lowered it again. That's pretty good there, and that's still fine right there. So I think we're going to be fine. I just hope it holds that way. You know, these new heads will stretch, so I'm a little concerned about that, but there's not much I can do about that. Well, these kinds of mechanical gadgets you can tweak until you go blind, so I think I'm going to call this good. This is the Iida tenor banjo. Pretty nice banjo. Does have that moisture staining around the edges, and I tried to dry that up some, but I can't get it to do anything. It's even a little worse on this side, I think. I was able to work on and clean up almost everything else. Got the new pegs in there and they look pretty good. I redid the peg head. I even redid the back of the peg head a little bit. Touched it up as best I could. The action settles in at right about 80 thousandths at the 12th fret, and that's about as good as I can do without going into more major surgery and just costing the customer a lot more money and time. As long as the head doesn't stretch too much, I think we'll be fine. I did go and tighten it up some extra turns there, so it's pretty tense, so hopefully it won't stretch too much. Let's see what she sounds like. I can't play one, but I can pick on it a little bit. It is tuned, I guess, kind of like an octave mandolin. Well, let's see what she sounds like. Well, that's about all I can do on it. I really don't know how to play it, but it does have a decent sound. It's tightly put together now. I think it's up in good shape. I hope it gives the customer years of trusty service. Thank you for watching. Tell your friends.